Every night, without fail, the footsteps arrived at 3:17 a.m., not a minute earlier. Not a minute later. Always 3:17. The digital clock beside Milo's bed glowed a soft, indifferent red, its numbers steady and calm, as if the world outside his small room was perfectly normal. But it wasn't. The house was dead quiet. No gust of wind rattling the windows, no voices from downstairs, not even the distant hum of cars. Just the low thrum of silence. And then, the first step. Step, step. Milo lay perfectly still beneath his blanket, his body rigid. The footsteps came from the hallway, slow and careful, like someone tiptoeing, trying not to wake anyone up. They moved back and forth right in front of his bedroom door. They weren't just passing by. They weren't coming closer to enter. They were just pacing. Milo started counting the steps in his head, just like his mom had taught him to count sheep when he couldn't sleep. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. The rhythm was hypnotic, almost mechanical. The sound never rushed. It never stumbled. Whoever or whatever was out there knew exactly where they were going. He squeezed his eyes shut, telling himself it was just the house settling. That's what grown-ups always said. Old houses make noises at night. Pipes knock. Floors creak. But houses don't walk. And houses don't stop when you build up the courage to whisper into the darkness. Mom? The footsteps froze. Milo's heart hammered against his ribs, the sound so loud in his ears it almost drowned out the silence. A moment stretched into an eternity. Then the pacing resumed, but it was different now. Slower, more deliberate, as if it was listening. As if it knew he was awake. When the footsteps finally faded into nothingness, Milo risked a glance at the clock. 3:26 a.m., 9 minutes. It had paced for 9 minutes. He didn't sleep again until the first gray light of morning crept through his curtains. The next night, Milo stayed awake on purpose. He lay on his side, his eyes fixed on the clock, watching the numbers burn in the dark, waiting for them to change. His room felt different when he was waiting for the fear. The shadows stretched longer, clinging to the corners of the room, making them seem deeper, darker. The stuffed bear on his shelf, usually a friendly companion, now looked like it was watching him back with its little glass eyes. 3:16. Milo held his breath, his lungs burning. 3:17. The footsteps began immediately. On cue, but this time Milo noticed something new. The sound wasn't the heavy tread of shoes on hardwood. It was softer, muted. It was the sound of skin against the floor, bare feet, step. Step, the sound crept closer to his door. So close that Milo could almost picture toes curling against the wood just on the other side. He pulled the blanket up to his chin, the fabric a flimsy shield, and whispered, his voice trembling, "Please go away." The footsteps stopped. A long, heavy silence followed. Then, very gently, something brushed against the door. It wasn't a knock. It wasn't a scratch. It was more like the soft slide of fingers, testing the surface. Milo didn't scream. He couldn't. His voice was a lead weight in his chest, stuck somewhere deep inside him. The thin line of light under his door remained dark. No shadows moved. Nothing tried to come in. After a while, the footsteps faded away again. But this time, Milo noticed something else. They didn't walk back toward the stairs. They walked down the hall, toward his parents' room. The next morning, Milo told his parents. His dad just smiled and ruffled his hair. Bad dreams, huh? It happens to everyone, sport. His mom, however, hugged him a little tighter than usual. If you hear it again, honey, you just call for us. Don't be scared. But that night, Milo didn't want to call out. He didn't want it to know he was listening. He didn't want to invite it in. At 3:17 a.m., the footsteps returned. They paced for longer this time. Slower, more patient. As if they had all the time in the world. Milo stared at the door, his eyes glued to the thin line of darkness beneath it. And then he saw it. Something that made his stomach twist into a cold, hard knot. The darkness moved. A shadow passed under the door. It was thin, stretched, and just wrong. Milo squeezed his eyes shut as tightly as he could, as if not seeing it would make it unreal. Then a voice whispered from the hallway. It was soft. Almost childlike. Milo. His name floated through the crack under the door like a breath of cold air, a chilling caress. Milo shook his head. Silent tears sliding down his temples and into his pillow. He didn't make a sound. "I just want my room back," the voice whispered again, full of a strange, hollow sadness. And with that, the footsteps retreated. The next day, Milo felt a new kind of determination. He explored the house, searching every nook and cranny. He didn't know what he was looking for, only that something felt deeply, terribly unfinished. In the hallway closet, tucked away behind a wall of old coats and forgotten boxes, he found a small, low door he had never noticed before. He pulled it open. Inside was a narrow, dusty crawl space, and taped to the far wall was a drawing. It was a child's drawing, done in crayon. It showed a long hallway, a bedroom door, and a small, lonely stick figure standing outside, pacing back and forth. Written at the bottom, in shaky, childish letters, were the words, "I wake up at 3:17. A cold dread washed over Milo, colder than any nightmare. That night he locked his bedroom door. It felt like a small victory. But the footsteps still came. At 3:17 they stopped right outside his door. The pacing continued, but now it was angry. Faster, heavier, a frantic, frustrated rhythm. Then the doorknob turned. Once, twice, the lock held firm. The voice spoke again, but it was no longer soft or sad. It was cold and demanding. "You're in my place." Milo, huddled in his bed, found his voice. He whispered to the door, to the presence on the other side. "I'm sorry." The footsteps slowed. The frantic energy seemed to seep away. The voice let out a long, weary sigh, a sound that seemed to carry years of exhaustion. "I just wanted to sleep." At 3:18 a.m., the pacing stopped, and it never returned. The silence that followed was deeper, truer than any silence Milo had ever known. The house was finally quiet. Years later, when Milo was grown and had long since moved away, the old house stood empty for a time. Eventually, a new family moved in, unaware of its history. Their young child slept in the very same room Milo once had, the walls painted a fresh, cheerful yellow. And every night, without fail, the digital clock on the bedside table glowed a soft, steady red. It would tick over to 3:17 a.m., and from the quiet hallway, the footsteps would begin again, slow, careful, pacing, waiting,